Huh?
Yeah. So it's our first day of in persons, I guess, after what? 2 years.
2.5 years.
2.5 years. And so again, it's we are having a new experience, including wearing this. I haven't wear this ceremonial robe for 2.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
It must be warm.
Yeah, that is when sometimes you feel you don't need it. Because it can be quite warm, even with just one. But yeah, so thank you for everyone who has come here and those who are joining through the Zoom. And definitely lovely to be able to connect in persons. So yeah. So maybe, as usual, I would like to start with a mindful breathing meditations to quiet our mind and to bring our mind in moment, in present. Then we can try to generate good intention, motivation for being here. May us coming here together, giving our precious time, being here together to listen and to reflect, contemplate on what we have listened. And by engaging, through any discussions, cautions. May all of this become cause and conditions to have a better understanding of emptiness, the ultimate truth. And may it be cause and conditions to cultivate a realization that realize the emptiness. And having actualized the ultimate truth, supported by the Bodhicitta mind, may we be able to achieve fully enlightened state as well as possible. And be greatest help and benefit each and every sentient beings. Okay.
Those of us here, the first prayer is on page 73.
Okay. Yeah.
To the founder, the
endowed,
endowed,
transcendent,
transcendent destroyer,
the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sudatta knower of the world, supreme guide for human beings to retain, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the chakra planet, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
to the
Founder,
founder,
the
the
endowed,
endowed,
transcendent
transcendent
destroyer,
destroyer,
the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sudatta knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to retain, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the chakra plane, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
to the founder, the
Endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sudatta knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to retain, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the chakra plane, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
And now on page 98, we do refuge and bodhicitta before the teachings. Once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge
Until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Soge Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dane Yatsu Shin Dagi Sheshe Gebe Sonam Gi Chola Penche Sangye Jubasho Sangye Chodam Soge Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dane Yatsu Shin Dagi Sheshe Gebe Sonam Gi Chola Penche Sangye Jubasho
mandala on page 35. No, we just didn't.
Okay. Saji.
Ipoti Snushti Meto Ariralishi Yite Gembale Nagefiru Mite uwa irukunanda chila chepasho Vedam Guru Rana Mandala Atayami.
Well, we'd like to do a mandala offering.
Okay.
We haven't done it so long that we're not sure we remember how.
We're going
Yeah, you will be in trouble if you make a mistake. You will be punished.
Oh, no.
Well, you're right.
That's gonna be serious punishment.
Left shoulder, like this.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're holding it like that.
Thank you, Geshe. We didn't do
Thank-
that.
Yeah, I think we didn't need to. Can I have this one close by here? This table. Thank you. So I think maybe, I guess, let me introduce for the people who are on Zoom here who we are. I think we have Emily, John, Eloise, Sarah, Stephen, and Mary. And I think they are on Zoom, we have Billy, Patty, is it Stella, Laura, Dawn, Mary, Kimberly, Mary Luz, and then Linda. So So again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, lovely to see, and thank you for joining. So, now I have to get used to it because before I'm always looking at the Zoom, people there. Now my mind, my eyes go in the Zoom instead of looking at it. So this is something now I have to kind of get retraining and kind of getting used to that. And so since I came back this year, we have been going through a particular text by a great Indian master, Atisha, Divankara, the Lamb to Enlightenment, the Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, when you first started, it's the very root and foundation of many of the great writing commented by Tibetan masters later. Early Kadamba masters wrote a commentary on this. It's called the stages of the path. There are quite few of them. And then later, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote commentaries on this text, Lamrim, three different, the great, middle, and short Lamrim. And then after that, third Dalai Lama wrote a commentary. Seventh Dalai Lama wrote a commentaries. Two different Panchen Lama wrote a commentaries, known as the Quick Path, and one as Quick Path, Lamrim Quick Path, and one as Blissful Path. So all these commentaries in our lineage come through the root being this one. And then in other lineage also, the word of my perfect teachers in Nyingma traditions is also based or rooted in this particular text. And in Kagyu traditions, there is very fundamental text. The liberation ornament is also rooted in this text. So in all different lineage, founder and great master of different lineage have based their commentaries, teachings, and practice based on this text. So it's a very important text for all different Tibetan lineages. And within that text, we already went through, the common practice of, middle scope, the small scope, and the common practice of middle scope. And then now we are in a section where is the practice of the great scope. And within the practice of great scope, then there is, to enter the practice of the bodhisattva, then cultivating the bodhicitta mind, the practice how to cultivate the bodhicitta mind. And once we have cultivated the bodhicitta mind, then taking the precept of aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta, and after having taken those precepts, then engage in the practice, both of practice such as 6 perfections, 6 paramitas. And within that, we finish the paramita of generosity, moral discipline, patience, and enthusiasm and virtues. And the meditation, karma abiding meditation. And we are in the sections where the wisdom, special insight. And within that wisdom, special insight, then, we have gone through where the preliminary practice, requirement for that special insight meditations, or the kind of the required preliminary practices. And then the actual practice of special meditation on special insight. And within that, then first stabilizing the object of meditation, the emptiness, through reasoning and logic. Through different reason and logic, then you come to conclusion and understanding what emptiness is. And once you come to that understanding, then staying in that meditative without much analysis, And so last week, we just finished through some of the different analysis, different reasoning, different logic that you find within the Nagarjuna's writings, and within the Aryadeva, he's one main disciple of Nagarjuna, and then Chandrakirti, who came later, and Shantidevas, in all their writings, they have written so many different ways of analyzing, so many different, through many different reasoning, logic, and analyzing what is the ultimate nature of self and all phenomena, ultimate nature of our own mind, and all that. And so last week we went through mainly three kind of reasoning that you find in those Indian masters' writings. So I think that is where we are. I think we finished verse number 50. And so now we are on verse number 51. I think that's where we are. So the presentations of the ultimate truth or reality, which is the object of the meditation in special insight, is presented first through reasoning and logic, and secondly is presented through scriptural sources and quotations. So then you have, in terms of scriptural sources, you find authentic scriptural sources from Indian masters' commentaries and in the sutras that you can rely on, that you can trust on. Not only based on scriptural quotation and scriptural sources, but also then you also have to use your own wisdom to analyze this with a reasoning and logic, using your own. So using wisdom to reason and logic, the author Atisha already explained as we went through a few verses up to verse number 50. And now here he is explaining the scriptural sources and quotations that you find in those source authentic Indian masters and Buddha himself. So that is where. Yeah. So in 51, he said the reasoning of 70 stanzas of emptiness. So that is one of the scriptures written by Nagarjunas. Nagarjuna had written many different scriptures, known as Rikso took 6 collections, 6 different texts. That is all different reasoning and logics in establishing the emptiness, such as the fundamental root text, and one of them is this one, 70 stanzas of emptiness. Among all of them, the fundamental is the Sasha which is the fundamental treatise on emptiness. And then in terms of relying on authentic sources for quotation from the sutra, then he has, is Dokundu, which is kind of the collections, summarize or compiling the or collections of those teaching on emptiness from the sutras. So yeah, the treatise on the middle way and so forth. So that the treatise on middle way is one of the fundamental root texts in terms of reasoning. And then there are many others, like different short different many short texts that he composed. So explain that the nature of things is established as emptiness. So in all of those sources, those scriptures, so whether it is those Nagarjuna's writings, or whether it is the writing of Aryadeva in his, or 400 stanzas, or whether it's a Buddha Palita's writing. And as I mentioned, also Chandrakirti has written a commentary on Nagarjuna's teaching on the fundamental middle way, and so his commentary on the middle way. And Shantideva's in his Buddha Way of Life, chapter 9, all of them, they explain on emptiness through reason and logic, and especially in the 70 stanzas of emptiness by Nagarjuna, and many, then they explain the emptiness from the point of view of dependent arising. Last, some of the reasoning and logic we went through, it was established emptiness from many other different reasoning and logic, but it hasn't been established as through the dependent arising. And so here in many of those texts, then it is the emptiness is presented from the point of view of dependent arisings. And in all of those commentary and presentation of emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, we're not talking about empty of something that was there before and now it become empty. Do you get it? The cup being empty of the water. It was not, before there was something, water or tea, and after you drink it, now it is being empty. When we talk about emptiness, and it is the nature of that phenomenon, whether it is our self, whether it is our mind, or whether it is our body, or all phenomena, the nature of them has been empty from the very beginningless. The very moment that that object come in existence, it come in exist as a nature of emptiness. It's not that it was an empty at one time and now we analyze and then it become empty. That it was not empty before, but we use reasoning and logic and now it become empty. It is just now through that kind of reasoning, logic, through that kind of meditations, we are discovering the nature of what it was, the nature of our mind, nature of self, ultimate nature of the phenomena. We are just being aware now. We are just being discovering that. But nature of all those phenomena has been empty from the very beginning of beginningless. The very moment. So that is, again, we have to understand, because sometimes when you think of emptiness, it seems like there was something before and then it becomes empty later. If we understand emptiness in that nature, then we cannot really understand the emptiness that is being explained here. And here in this 51, in that stanza of 51, here the author Atisha is saying he is not going to explain in all detail all those different reasoning and logic that you find in all these scriptures, because if you go in all detail, it will be too much. So here he is only going to touch very briefly summarize and briefly for the sake of meditations, without going too details, So that is why he says, since there are many passages, I've not seated them here. He's not going to seat all different quotations, all the reasonings and logic you find in all those great commentary, all of them here. Even though there are so many of them, even though if you read Nagarjuna's writing, there are so many, he used so many different reasons, so many different logic, trying to understand so many different angles and all of that, and with all other masters as well. But here the author is saying, even though there's so many and so much, he's not going to quote and cite everything here. He's not going to explain all of them here, but have explained just their conclusions, So here he's going to just explain their conclusion, summarize, summarize of, if you go in, expand and detail, it can be, kind of almost like endless, but when you kind of condense, summarize the conclusion of all of them, and the purpose of explaining short in a summarized in conclusion in this way is for the purpose of meditations. So for the purpose of meditations, so if you go too detailed, then when we try to meditate, then we might get, our mind can be kind of lost, go everywhere. And so, but instead, trying to just focus on the conclusions, the summarize of all of that. And the conclusions that he is going to hear is one of the main reasons, or the logic, or the quotations that you find in the 70 stanzas or emptiness by Nagarjuna is, as I mentioned, that reason that it is used in that 70 stanzas of emptiness. The reasoning and logic that you use there is dependent arising to understand the emptiness. Among many different reasons, that is one of the, it's known as the king of the reasons. So, well, because once we have understood emptiness based on dependent arising, then we are free from any of the extreme, and to be able to find the middle way. Normally there's two extremes, the extreme of nihilism, the extreme of internalism. Either we think nothing exists, or we think there is inherent existence. Both of them are extreme. So when you understand dependent arising, because things exist by dependent arising, so there is no danger of saying that they do not exist. Nihilism. If something exists by depending on other conditions, other factors, how can it not be existence? So therefore, the nihilism. And when we understand through reason logic of dependent arising, then it means because that object is dependent arising, therefore it can't be independent existence. And if it's not independent existence, it can't be inherent existence. So therefore that object cannot be inherent existence or independent existence. And then that is, it becomes free from that extreme of internalisms. So therefore you are able to find a middle way, safe way, without falling into one of the extreme. And so therefore, that is why that reasoning is called the king of reason. Among all the different reasons, that is a different logic reasoning. This is the kind of the best reasoning and logic that you can use in our meditations to understand the middle way, the ultimate truth. And that reasoning is not, that reasoning is based on some teaching that you find in Sutra, okay, within the Sutra. And so there is a Sutra called, Mateva Shiva Do. There is someone, I don't know, did one of the audience asking questions to the Buddha, and then Buddha giving answer to that. In that sutras, he explain whichever is produced by depending on other condition is not produced. Whatever is produced by depending on other factors or conditions is not produced.
It's not produced
Yeah.
or it's not inherent.
So first I'm going to read the quotations.
Okay.
Okay. So in literally, when you translate literally, what it says, whatever is produced by depending on other factors is not produced. And that do not have, the nature of being produced. So that is, and whichever depending on others, condition or factors, is emptiness. And whoever understand that emptiness, find the path. So that is the source of those teachings in Thomas Sutras. So first, it says whatever is produced by depending on other factors is not produced. So here, it's in contradictions. If you just read that one line, it looks like there's contradictions. Whatever is produced by depending on others is not produced. The next line, it does not, it does not have inherent existence. It does not, is not produced inherently. So that one is explaining what it means is not produced in that first line. When Buddha says it's not produced, he's not saying it does not exist. What he is saying by second line, it means that does not produce inherently. And next verse, whatever is produced by depending on other factors is empty. So it's empty because it's dependent arising. Okay. It's empty not because there's nothing. It's empty because it's dependent arising. And whoever understands that emptiness, who understand emptiness as being empty of independent existence because it is dependent arising, then whoever understands that emptiness find the path to enlightenment. So, and both Nagarjuna and Lama Tsongkhapa says, their mind is blown away, astonished for that explanation of Buddha, explaining emptiness from the point of view of dependent arisings. It's empty because of dependent arising. And it's dependent arising because it's empty. So the meaning of emptiness is dependent arising. The meaning of dependent arising is emptiness. There's no contradictions among dependent arising and emptiness, but they mean same. Emptiness means dependent arising means emptiness. And when we understand that, when someone understands, then there's no danger of falling into extreme, as explained before. When we don't understand that, then there is danger of falling in one of the extreme. So it's a little bit more easy to understand, because it's dependent arising, therefore it's empty. Because it's dependent arising, therefore everything is empty of inherent existence, empty of independent existence. On other hand, because it's empty of because it's empty of independent existence, because it's empty of inherent existence, therefore is a dependent arising. Therefore is dependent arising. So that is, and both Nagarjuna and Lama Tsongkhapa pay praise to the Buddha Shakyamuni for the very reasoning of this, the explanation of emptiness from that point of view is something that blown away mind and astonishing. That has not been explained by any teacher in the past. Even though there have been so many great teachers of so many different spiritual paths, but none of other teachers of spiritual path, other spiritual path had been explained that. And so, so that is, this is very important to understand. Understanding emptiness doesn't mean nothing. Emptiness doesn't mean something cannot function, but it just means it's empty of independent existence. That is because the word can be very confusing when we talk about emptiness. Because just by word, if we get kind of caught up in the just words, taken literally, it can give an impression that means nothing exists. But we have to remember the meaning of emptiness is empty of independent existence. And so Nagarjuna in his treatise on the middle way, treatise on the middle way, he says, similarly, whatever is dependent arisings is free or existing from its own side, or existing by its own side. So again, he also explains similarly, just as Buddha. Whatever dependent arising is empty of existing from its own side, existing by itself without depending on other factors, without other conditions. In same, he explained, there's no phenomena that is not empty. And there's no phenomena that is not dependent arising. Basically saying all phenomena are empty, all phenomena are dependent arising. And same is explained by Lama Tsongkhapa in his praise to dependent arisings. Also similar, same, And such reasoning through dependent arising is very highly praised even by Buddha himself. And so in that same sutras, Buddha explained, those wise ones, whoever realize dependent arisings, they will not fall into the extremes. They will not fall into extreme. Those wise who is able to understand the dependent arising, they will not fall into the extremes. And so that is the unique explanations. As Buddha explained Sutra, and that is the same unique explanation Nagarjuna and his spiritual sons. So here is it explained the main interference or obstacles to find the middle way, the ultimate truth, ultimate reality. That is the middle way. It's true. There are two. One is, grasping and perceiving object to exist inherently or independently. That is one of the obstacles. That kind of misconceptions, that kind of mind that grabs and perceives the object to be inherent existence or independent existence. Through understanding the emptiness, that extreme or internalism will be destroyed. Through the understanding of emptiness, the other obstacles to find the middle way is thinking, there's no cause and effect. There's no cause, there's no action, there's no result, nothing exists. Therefore, nothing functions. Therefore, there's no cause and effect. That is another obstacles or interference to find the middle way, the ultimate truth. And to overcome that, then you have to have the understanding of dependent arising. When you have understand dependent arising, how everything exists by depending on other cause, conditions, other factors, then you wouldn't have that, you wouldn't fall in that extreme believing and misperceiving or misunderstanding that nothing exists. There's no cause and effect, and so therefore, and those two extremes can be overcome through understanding, the emptiness, through the reasoning of dependent arising, understanding dependent arising from the reasoning of emptiness. When you understand those two, it's empty because of dependent arising, is dependent arising because of its emptiness. When you have that understanding, then you find the middle way without falling in any of those two extremes. And when you understand that, then that is when you find the Nagarjuna thoughts, Buddha's ultimate thought and ultimate reality. When you understand that, then you will not, one will not kind of reject the idea of moral disciplines or immoral disciplines or, virtues and non-virtues, because sometimes when there's a misunderstanding of emptiness, then you think, in emptiness. And when you understand the emptiness not correctly, and you don't understand the dependent arising, the meaning of emptiness and dependent arising, then there is a danger, because in emptiness, there's no virtue, no non-virtues. In emptiness, there's no morality, no non-immorality. In emptiness, there's no nirvana, no samsara. And then you think, if I'm practicing emptiness, I don't need to be moral. If I practice moral, then it is dualistic. Therefore, I should not practice morality. Morality is not needed. Therefore, all of this, there is that kind of danger of that misunderstanding. Do you get it? The realization, the emptiness, the ultimate truth, acting as a contradictory to the relative reality, conventional relative reality. They should not be contradicting, they should not be harming, they should be going together, complementing each other. But when you don't understand, that is the danger of that. There is the danger of that. Rejecting all the conventional world because of ultimate reality. Because your understanding of ultimate reality is just incorrect understanding emptiness, then you kind of reject all the conventional world. Then you don't know how to function in the world. Then because you think in emptiness, there's no coming, going, there's moral, not immoral, then it feels like you can do anything. Do you get it? That is because you haven't understood the emptiness correctly. If you understand correctly, you will not reject the conventional world. Instead, you will support the conventional world. The conventional world or the experience or reality is dependent on life due to many cause, conditions, factors, different phenomena, different object functions, effect differently, has different functionings. And with each of different functioning, it affects differently. That cannot be rejected. That is individual direct experiences. So while you are understanding emptiness, at the same time, not hurting that, not rejecting that, in order to be able to understand emptiness, at the same time, not rejecting all of that, instead supporting each of that, then you need to have understanding of emptiness correctly from the dependent arising point of view. If you don't have that, then there can be a danger of that. When you meditate on emptiness, when you seems like you have understand emptiness, where you reject all of that conventional reality world, it means we haven't found the middle way. It means we haven't found the middle way. We haven't found the Nagarjuna Buddha's ultimate thought. That means, we haven't found the middle way and the right, correct understanding of emptiness. And so, yeah. Because if that is the case, then there's no reasons in one of the rice seedling sutras where Buddha hold and rice seedling, because this exists, that exists. Because it is produced, that is being produced. So he explained the general dependent arisings. Due to certain cause, certain result is being produced. And then he go in more specific cause and conditions. And then because of ignorance, then there is karmic formations, that karma. And because of karma, then after we create the karma, then the karmic seed is left in our consciousness. And then at the time of death, that karmic seed is fully activated through grasping, craving and grasping. And when that karmic seed or potential fully being activated through craving and grasping, then it becoming existent to produce a next samsara rebirth. And then you have some sort of rebirth, name and the form and the name. And then after the name and the form, then there is the sixth sense faculty is developed. And when the sixth sense faculty is developed and consciousness is there, the object is there, then you come into contact with the consciousness, coming into the contact with the objects. And once you come into contact with the objects, then there is feeling arising, different feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feelings, different feelings, depending on what kind of object you come in contact. And through that feeling, then samsaric rebirth is produced. And once samsaric rebirth is there, then there is aging and death. So then he explained the evolution of samsara through the 12 dependent link, starting from the ignorance. And that he explained specific, particular dependent arisings, okay, of sentient beings' experience. If emptiness means nothing, then there's no need to explain all of that. All this evolution of samsara, how one cause leads to the next one lead to the next, up to the samsaric experience. There's no need to that. There's no need to meditate on that. So therefore, understanding emptiness shouldn't reject the cause and conditions, the functional cause and conditions. Instead, it should be supported by understanding because it's empty, that means because it's empty of independent existence, because it's not independent existence, therefore it's dependent arising. If something is dependent arising, then it has to depend on other cause, condition, and factors. So it should be supporting that, not the other way around. If we have a correct understanding of emptiness, if I found the middle way and correct. And in terms of dependent arisings, you find dependent arising from the point of view of cause and conditions. There's one understanding of dependent arisings, which means depending on its preceding cause and conditions. Okay. If we take karma, it's dependent on the karmic formation, is dependent on the ignorance, the cause. Okay. Hello?
What time did you usually start?
We start at 6 and we finish at 7:30.
Okay, so.
But you can come if you want to come. Yes.
Is that sound good in the picture? I can't get it down. It's okay.
I think. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So we spoke about everything is dependent arisings. Okay. Understanding everything as a dependent arisings. Nothing can exist independently by itself without depending on other factors, conditions. And there are many different levels of understanding of dependent arisings. from gross to subtle level. The gross level of understanding dependent arising is understand dependent arising based on cause and conditions. Okay, the flowers, the arising of the flower being produced because of the seed. The persons, the gardeners, the earth, the water, fertilizers, the heat, everything's. So we understand that flowers is dependent arising because it's dependent on all these different causes and conditions, isn't it? That one's gross understanding of dependent arisings. You know, all different Buddhist school of thoughts, they all kind of accept and understand that kind of dependent arisings. All conditioned phenomena are dependent arising, but depending on its cause and conditions. That understanding is not such as extremely difficult, or it's not such a subtle or difficult point to understand. To some degree, I think even the animals understand. They might not be able to put in the word is a dependent arising, but they know if I eat that one, I will get sick. That is some understanding of dependent arising, cause and condition, cause and effect that has on them. If I try to attack that, the mom will attack me. They have some understanding of that. When the mom is around there, they will not, you know, or so they have to a certain degree, whether they are able to food, this is cause, this is effect, and all of that, or the word dependent, but generally they have some understanding of certain particular cause lead to certain particular effect or experience. They have some understanding of that. So that dependent arising understanding is not so subtle and difficult. So if that's the case, then why does we often hear, you know, understanding of emptiness is so difficult, and we hear also others saying, you know, dependent arising is equal as emptiness, you know, emptiness means dependent arising. So then the next level of dependent arising is everything exists by depending on, not necessarily its cause, but depending on other objects. You know, depending on other factors and objects. For example, when you talk about I or me or self, you know, there is a concept of self or me or I because there's a concept of others. In relation to others, there's me, you know, and there's a concept of others in relation to me. They are dependent on each other. If there's no concept of self, there's no concept of others. If there's no concept of others, there's no concept of self. It's just like here and there. If there's no concept of there, there's no concept of here. If there's no concept of here, there's no concept of there. They are dependent on each other for that concept to exist, and other to exist is other, self to exist self, here to exist as a here, there to exist as there. They are dependent on each other. That is more subtle, more difficult to understand, you know. And that is the same with everything. There is cause because there's effect. There's effect because there's cause. You cannot talk about cause if there's no effect. There wouldn't be a concept of cause if there's no effect. And there wouldn't be effect if there's no cause. Cause is dependent on effect, effect is dependent on cause. The idea of coming and going, they are dependent on each other. If there's no idea of concept of going, there's no idea of coming. You cannot relate. That there is only going in relation to the coming. There's coming only in relation to the going. So they are dependent. If you take one of them away, then the other cannot exist as it is. And that's dependent arising. Same with samsara nirvana. The whole idea. If there's no samsara, there's no nirvana. The whole nirvana is when your state is free from the samsaric state. That is why we call nirvana. If there's no samsara, there's nothing to be free of that. And there's no nirvana. And when you talk about samsara, the samsara is a state that is not free from all the delusions and all the pain. And we can only talk about because there is a state that is free from all that, and we are not in at this moment not that, and therefore that's how we describe samsara. And so therefore samsara depends on nirvana, nirvana depends on samsara. Samsara cannot exist as samsara without nirvana. Nirvana cannot exist as a nirvana without dependence on samsara. So that kind of dependent arisings become much more, little bit more subtle and more complicated or complex. You know. And when Buddha explained, you see that kind of term in many of sutras, there's no coming, going, there's no death and rebirth and all of that. Because there's no coming by itself without depending on the act of going. There's no act of going by itself without depending on coming. There's no act of birth without depending on death by itself. There's no act of death by itself without depending on the birth. And that will be same if we apply that reasoning logic, everything's small, big, There's concept of big in relation to the small. There's small in relation to big. If there's no big, there's no idea and the concept of small. If there's no small, and that is good and bad, something to be abandoned, something to be accomplished or practiced. All of them, are all mutually kind of dependent arisings. All of them mutually dependent arisings. When we have that understanding of mutually dependent arisings, then we don't have this grasping, each of them being absolute by itself. Do you get it? At the moment when we don't have that understanding or absolutely coming by itself, nothing to do with going. Going is absolutely going by itself, nothing to do with coming. Good is good, absolute by itself, nothing to do with bad. Bad is bad, absolutely by itself, nothing to do with good. And all of that. And when you have that kind of feeling or misperceiving something to be absolute by itself, then there is stronger attachment and aversions. Towards the objects. And that's where attachments, aversions arises, due to not realizing that, due to not only not realizing, actually misunderstanding that. Because if you really see, it's interesting, what is coming and going, The act of moving your feet, taking the steps, after our class, we will open the door and you will have this act of stepping your feet towards your car. Okay? Towards your car, towards your home. Is that act coming or going? Itself. Is neither coming and going. The act itself is neither coming and going. From your point of view, it's going. From someone who's waiting in the car, someone who's waiting in the home, from their point of view, you are coming. The act hasn't changed. It's the same act. Neither you are wrong, neither the one person who's waiting, for him or her to think you are coming is not wrong. For you to think you are going is not wrong. So what is the act itself? So that act itself is neither coming or going. Is coming in relation to you, is going in relation to you, and is coming in relation to that person. But the act itself neither coming and going by itself. That gives you a little bit of idea with everything. When Buddha talk about in emptiness, there's no coming and going, because the act of coming and going is neither coming and going by itself, by act itself. That it will be same with rebirth and death. Let's say, when our most subtle consciousness leave this body, okay? The consciousness separating from our body, leaving our body, we think that is the death. Okay, that's the death. That's happening. And we think is death by itself, objectively itself is death itself. But what about the moment your consciousness separate or leave your body, that very moment you conceive in the intermediate stage body simultaneously. It's not like the consciousness is you leave and then it was hanging out somewhere there before they have intermediate stage. That happens simultaneously. The moment you leave this body, consciousness, immediately the intermediate stage part has been immediately there. So the mind separating from you, this body, from intermediate state is a rebirth. Do you get it? From your point of view, it's a death. But from that intermediate state point of view, it's a rebirth. Same act, same action, same thing. It's just the consciousness separate from this body. That same thing. Because the moment is separate from this body, that very moment, it takes intermediate stage, part of. And so from that point of view, is a rebirth. From this point of view, is a death. But it's neither death, neither rebirth. But so it's neither death or rebirth by itself. It's rebirth from the point of view of that intermediate stage, and is a death from point of view of human beings in terms of ourselves. And we can apply that every good, bad, positive, negative, small, big, Is this small or big? It's neither small or big. It's neither small or big. It's a big in relation to the flower, this flower, and it is small in relation to this house. All is relative. But the object itself is neither small or big. And you can apply that to all objects. And so when you apply, then you see, so for any object to exist as it is, it depends on many other factors. That is the point. Without other factors, it cannot exist as it is. Coming cannot be coming by itself without existing on other factors. Going cannot be going without existing on other factors. Dead cannot be dead without depending on other factors. Rebirth cannot be rebirth without depending on other factors. Small cannot be small without depending on other factors. Big cannot be big without depending on other factors. Good cannot be good without depending on other factors. Bad cannot be bad without depending on other factors, and all of that. So therefore, when you analyze that, there's nothing that can exist absolutely by itself without depending on other factors. That is the reality. The problem is when you don't have that realization, then every object that we experience, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, what we comes in our mind, everything appears as existing by itself as it is. Nice food by itself as nice food by itself. Nice sound by itself, or bad sound by itself, without depending on other conditions, factors. And then due to that, then either we give a strong attachment or strong aversions, and that become the problems. So that is the kind of the main. And then if you go in further, then everything exists by depending on your mind. Your mind labeling or objects, certain cause and condition come together on the basis of certain cause, conditions, certain things coming, basis coming together, then your mind label as it is, whatever that it is. So it's all dependent on our mind, the thoughts to label as it is. So it's depending on that. So then that is where the concept comes of that everything merely imputed, merely labeled. You see that kind of terms and concept in the sutras and all this Indian masters' commentaries, how everything is merely labeled, how everything is merely imputed, how everything is merely designated, that nothing exists from its own side objectively, but it's merely on the coming together of the basis, the parts, then is merely labeled, merely imputed by the thought, by the mind. And so therefore it dependent on the mind, that label, it depending on the thoughts of the mind that designate, that label, that impute. So understanding dependent arising from that point of view become more, those are the more difficult, and that is the subtle ones, And in order to understand the emptiness, we have to understand that this subtle dependent arising. Without that subtle understand dependent arising, just gross understand dependent arising will not lead us to the ultimate understanding of ultimate emptiness. As I said, even the animal can have certain understanding of dependent arising, gross understanding of dependent arising, cause and conditions, gross. But that doesn't mean they have understanding of emptiness. So I think, I think maybe I will kind of conclude here today. Any questions from today's class? Any comments, cautions?
Yes,
Yes, please.
that merely labeled part that's also a dependent arising.
Yeah.
Is that the most subtle understanding of dependent arising, or is there another level
Yeah, that is the most subtle understanding dependent arising. When you understand everything is merely level, everything exists independent arising on the basis of merely level, merely imputed.
Merely imputed. So that depends on a being.
Oh,
If you're,
if you understand this table or this laptop, is merely level. It exists, but it exists on the basis of merely level, merely imputed. What it means, so what does that mean? It exists, there's a functioning of the laptop of specific functioning as a laptop, which is very different functioning from the water bottle. The water has different, it has its own functioning, which is different from the laptop functionings and different functionings. So, so there is different functioning of those different objects, individual different unique functioning is those. Therefore, due to those unique functioning, due to different conditions, factors, it exists and it affects different beings differently. But if you try to find what is the computer, what is the water within its part, within the basis, you cannot pinpoint and find out. At the same time, you cannot say it do not exist because our experience, direct experience, see them different functioning, and it affects us differently. And therefore, it has to exist, but if we cannot find from objectively, from its own side, objectively, then it must be existing by merely imputed by the mind, by the thoughts. So when you understand that, you understand it does not exist by itself. At the same time, you understand it is existing because it exists by merely imputed on the basis of parts or different conditions coming together and having certain unique functioning of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it in a different terms, like something different than a computer, like something out in space or something that we don't know about, but it still exists.
But when you say imputed the mind, it doesn't mean I have to impute everything. It is there is another being that have a valid cognition that impute that.
That's okay, so it has to be a being.
Being, and not only impute, but with the valid cognitions.
Valid cognition.
Because our mistaken mind can impute anything.
Yeah.
That doesn't count, If I impute this as water and you impute it as something else, you impute something, then there will be a disaster, So there is kind of whatever object that is it is in another term, maybe if we use, maybe, I don't know if it helps, if we try to find in a way, let's say this laptop, someone started with in their mind, designing, having the idea how to have this kind of, and they start and, over the time, they develop, this new technology, new phenomena, new objects. And then they decided to make, what should we give at this level? Then they decided, we'll call it a laptop. Whether it's decided by the one mind or whether it's decided by a group of minds. They label that. Then since after that, everyone is accepted and everyone known as a laptop. And that from that moment, then when someone says, bring me the laptop, we all understand what you are referring to. Okay. Before that, if someone says, give me a laptop, you wouldn't understand what to bring. you know. You don't, because even though it is there, you don't interact, you don't relate as a laptop. There is something, but you don't know. It's, you know, and once you label it that, and then everyone relate as a laptop, and same with all objects. So there need to be a being that label that objects, but not only label or impute, but that the mind that label or impute has to be a valid cognitions. Okay. Because once it's labeled, then this become the laptop, and if my mind started to label this is as you know, I don't know, something else, and then that will be not valid cognitions, you know. Okay. Not everyone can relate with that. It's just my just my illusional or delusional mind, mistaken mind labeling something when it's not.
So everything is, I mean, the problem is that nothing exists in the way that we think it does. And that's all related to attachment. Is that it's all related to kind of attached to, we're habitually attached to just thinking, oh, that's a laptop, and not thinking anything beyond that it's dependent on other things and that it's merely labeled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, you know, until we have realization and emptiness, everything, whatever we experience, external, internal, it appears to our mind due to the imprint from our ignorance, existing by itself. The object, and not only there is appearance of object, some object appears nice, good, some objects appear not nice, not good, bad. And not only there is an appearance of something positive, negative, good, bad, something useful, something unuseful. Not only the object just appear as that object, but there is appearance of all of this with all these different adjective or qualities. And not only there's appearance, then we believe that, oh, there is a goodness or attractiveness or usefulness from objective side. Nothing to do with my mind, our mind. And there is from objectively is a badness, unusefulness, all of that. And based on that, then those which appear and which we perceive to be useful, beneficial, good, we get attached to them. The object that we appear and which we believe that are not useful, harmful, bad, then we have aversion towards that. And that is how attachment and aversion arises from the base.
Ignorance is creating a dualistic mind, and then it's all the delusions.
Arise, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fundamentally, it is the ignorance, the very root of all the negative emotions, which are the source of our problems. Yeah. So yeah, then we can do the dedications.
Under obstacles.
Okay.
Siri, Alyssa, Laura, Maureen, Maggie, May, SJ, Nene, Auntie, Nas, Dasha, Katya, Deb, John, Jiwan, Rutabaga, Sean, Mara, Bill, those suffering illnesses, Michael Malone, John Bailey, Rutabaga, Siri, person who's had 2 fingers amputated, all the people injured in Ukraine, Walter, Dorcas, David, Patty, Alan Gregory, Wonder Wheel, and Arrow the dog.
Can you put Elma? Elma?
Alma.
Elma. I-L-M.
Okay, and there's
Diane, also Diane. Diane, D-I-A-N-N-E.
and those who have recently died, we have Claire, the 3 people who died in the floods, all the people who have died in the war in Ukraine,
The wildlife who have died in relation to the fires and the floods and unsuitable environments.
So we can dedicate, due to all the virtues that others once have created times, may everyone whose name has reside and whose name have not reside, or read, who are having obstacles, may all their obstacles and cause of obstacle be immediately pacified, and may they all find perfect solutions to whatever problems. And those who have illness, whose names are read or not read, whoever has any illness, may they be recover and cure from the illness and the cause of illness as soon as possible, and have healthy and long life. And those who have passed away, wherever they are, may they be free from all the fears, suffering, cause of suffering. And may they have perfect human rebirth, may the Dharma, actualize the Dharma in their mind and achieve enlightenment. Okay, so.
and dedication prayers start on page 36.
Page 36, yeah.
Due to the merits of
These virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more.
Short, long life prayer for His Holiness. This is the old one, but this is what we have from.
That's what we have.
In the land and circle.
Above the snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and earth. Prabhu Chere Ksitigarbha Yasa, please remain until the samsara ends.
You who uphold
The sublime moral way, who serves as a wonderful metaphor, sustaining, preserving, and spreading not victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayer, honoring to his rules, severe myself and others, who disciple. Please. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So thank you, everyone.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.